All right, let's do it live on a Thursday edition of the program. Welcome into Cleveland Browns Daily. I am merely Beau. He is the great Z. How you doing, pal?
I'm doing well. It's amazing to think 1 year ago today at probably around this time, I was in the air from Puerto Vallarta to O'Hare.
Yep.
O'Hare was probably one of the scariest 2 hours of my life because at the time it was just you didn't know. I knew that I'd flown back into a world that had changed. It was insane. And, 1 year ago today, it's just crazy to think that it's been exactly a year. Rudy Gobert, I think the press conference was tonight, or he got COVID tonight, because I remember that was coming as I was coming home from the airport with Miss K's parents, and they were like, I was like, the NBA shut down. They're like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? What's going on? And it's just wild to think of how far we have come in 1 year and just what that day, I'll never forget March 11th, 2020 at all, and just how quickly it went in that week that we left March 4th. And by, that Monday, we thought we were being so proactive and saying, all right, we're not going to go to Disney. It just doesn't seem judicious at this point, in a couple of weeks, to the fact that by March 11th, you felt like everybody that you saw was a threat to you and that you were going to get this COVID and it was not going to be good, and just how crazy it all was. I mean, totally insane.
Gibby, was it you and I doing the show?
It was. I think John Greco might have been with us too. But I think it might have been Gribble. It might have been.
And then I was with you the next day,
here.
And I remember that when we came back, we had talked
remote
to the head of HR, right? And we said, you know what, we're going to be cautious. Since we just came from out of the country, we'll stay home Thursday, Friday. If we don't have symptoms by Sunday, then we'll come in on Monday. And then by that Friday, the office was closed, period. And you haven't been back other than to be outside of training camp.
Correct. Yeah. It was just a waterfall of events, and I remember that sports was kind of the linchpin of it all, because the Ivy League canceled their tournament like a full week before. They were the first, and they shut it down. And then these conference tournaments started that evening was crazy, because they were playing games, and then the Big East started play and then stopped a game in the middle of the game.
At halftime.
They shut down a game. At halftime, right. And they were going to play, and then they shut it down, and then the Big East was canceled, and then it just went one after another. Then the Rudy Gobert thing happened. Like, oh, my God, if Rudy Gobert has it, the whole NBA has it. It's in this locker room. And then you started to understand how wide-reaching it was. And then I remember, for whatever reason, I can't remember if it's the exact same time, but Tom Hanks got it.
Yep.
Shortly after there. And then it was like, oh, my God, now we're going to lose Tom Hanks. And it was such a scary time. And it happened so quickly, and it went from, okay, we're playing basketball, everything's fine in front of people and everything, to the next thing you know, you couldn't travel. It felt like it happened in about 48 hours. Like it was, you had to be among the last flights in, because everything was shut down right after.
We got in so it was Wednesday, March 11th, and I remember our flight got delayed that morning out of Puerto Vallarta, and I was like, we need to get out of here because we could get stuck here.
Yes.
Like, you didn't know if there was talk they were going to shut the borders, and so we changed all of our flights to get home as quickly as possible. But I remember we went through customs at O'Hare that Wednesday, and it took us about 20 minutes, and you were terrified because that's people coming in from around the world, and
Sure.
You're like, if somebody coughs, you're diving for cover. It was a very stressful.
It was before masks. It was before gloves. It was before all of that stuff. Like
all of that. I was walking around like this, and I was not breathing. Which thank goodness I used to be a swimmer. I could hold my breath for a long period of time, but not quite long enough. But it was insane. But I remember that by Friday, when the real panic set in, that everybody needs to get back to this country that wanted to be in the U.S., et cetera, that the customs line, I think, was like 6 hours at O'Hare.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. You started to get those images. And then I remember vividly the Saturday morning, which would have been a year ago Saturday. I remember that Saturday morning going to get groceries and at like dawn, like as soon as it opened. And it was pretty manageable, but I also remember spending like $1,000 in groceries because I didn't know if I would ever be back.
Yeah.
So I remember like stopping up on frozen goods. Like that's how crazy it was. Like you had it felt like if you got it, you died. Like that's what it seemed like at that time. It was a new virus. Nobody knew anything about it.
Everybody was a threat.
Spreading like wildfire.
Yeah.
Everybody's a threat. Even if you went outside, like at that point, you thought, my God, could it fly through the air? Like we had no idea. We were trying to figure it out in real time. It was terrifying. I remember I went to the grocery store. I looked like Doc Brown smuggling plutonium. I mean, that's how I was dressed.
I had my own
go to the grocery store.
Homemade bleach bottle that I had on a holster that I walked into Giant Eagle with. And the guy's like, "Sir, you can't like spray this." I'm like, "Dude, somebody just touched this pad. Like, I'm not spraying it."
Right. Rubber gloves and masks, and I remember glasses, and then I had like something on my head. Like it was crazy, but that's what it seemed like, and it was crazy. And you remember, I remember it vividly. And you remember sports shutting down. And what I remember also was, I'll never forget when we left the building and we said, well, when will we see each other again here? And initially you thought it would be a couple weeks, and then it became very clear it was going to be a lot more. And here we are a year later, and I still haven't been back in the building. I've been there a couple of times, to pick things up or whatever. But in terms of like doing a show, I haven't done that in a year in the building, which is remarkable. But yeah, it was crazy. I remember Gibby's ability to pack, like the ability for me to do this remotely in the amount of time that he was able to pull it off is one of the most remarkable things ever. And he said, "I will walk you through this if we need to, but this is pretty." He walked me through it quickly, and I'd never set anything up remotely before. And we pulled it off, and it's been this way ever since. And there was anxious moments. I remember that Monday because everyone was remote, and is this going to work? And then it did, and it's been going ever since. But surreal to think back on it.
It certainly is. I mean, I was joking with Kayla that as we get, the world's getting back there and vaccines, and it seems like, every adult that will want the vaccine will be able to have it, by the end of May, they were saying, and perhaps even sooner now it's looking like, which is tremendous news to think that how far we've come in a year with all of this. But I said, I'm nervous to go back to Mexico because I don't want to like jinx it and leave one world and come back into another again. Like if we're in a good spot, let's keep rolling with that. But yeah, it's pretty incredible that here we are, March 11th, a year later, and it looks like, remember the draft, the NFL draft was all done. Goodell was in his basement, and that's in April. That it seems like within a year, though, we might be able to have the draft here in Cleveland, which would be great, obviously, for our city and just another sign of how far we've come. But just, wow, it is amazing to think that.
So much uncertainty.
Yes.
You had no idea.
No idea.
The days that followed, you had no idea when things would be back or if or how long or.
It was terrifying.
When would, yeah. And I remember you and I saying, and when we would talk about it, we need science to save us. Is where we're at because there's no other way, and science is. They are.
Yes, they are.
The vaccines have been are really incredible, and probably not being. I don't want to get into the whole thing, but it seems like they're even better than they're getting credit for.
Definitely better than they're getting credit for. Yeah, they just don't want people to go wild right away. But I think it's becoming pretty clear that you will be able to resume pretty much normal life. And if you want to wear a mask in places, that'll be your choice, and I'm sure certain people will. And for me, it's like a habit that I have, especially going to the grocery store. And I didn't get a sinus infection this year, so I'm saying, you know what? That's nice to avoid those kind of things. It worked. So that in that sense, it was good. On a lighter note, as we move away from the seriousness of this, I have something that is equally serious, but a little bit lighter. And I alluded to it in a text that somebody of great importance has weighed in on the light situation.
Okay.
And I would like to read a direct quote. And
please.
I'm pretty sure you will be able to, you will know immediately who has authored this note. Gibbe, this requires your full attention.
Not really paying attention. I'm watching.
No, please. Respect. Here we go.
We have to break in 2 minutes for Scott Pioli.
All right.
So, like today, Junior.
You're taking up time talking. And I quote, "Please tell Gibbe that even all of our commissioned warships require upgrades to systems to make sure they are competitive and lethal. We wouldn't send a destroyer out without the latest Aegis weapon systems, so it's time for lights for the microphones. Don't give up the ship. The CBD studio must sail forth with confidence to keep its adversaries at bay. Lights away, my boys. Lights away. Signed, the former Secretary of the Navy of the United States
Thomas Modly
of
is
America.
On this?
That's right.
With that type of inspiration?
That's right.
Well,
lights away,
guess
my
we'll have
boys.
Lights by Monday.
Lights away.
Guess we'll have lights on Monday.
I mean, to me that felt like a mic drop. That felt like, okay.
Yeah.
The resistance
that's the
has
end
been
of the
futile.
conversation, I think,
yes.
at that point. Yeah.
Gibby's even
unless Mr. Modly, who I truly appreciate and respect, is going to cut a little check for the lights.
I think you're making
Mr.
these
Modly,
things out to be like $1 million, which they're not.
Comparing the lights
they're not.
to a battleship is a sore.
I have
sore
received offers. I have received offers on Twitter from electricians to come in here and do it themselves for free.
That's
greatest
great.
part of this
they're not
entire
allowed in the
bit.
Building.
The greatest part of this entire bit is, of course, the lights are not coming. The financial hit would not come out of Gibby's pocket for starters.
Of course not. You ran over Rush yesterday. I was talking to Rush about it in the parking lot this morning after getting tested. It's unbelievable.
It would not be at Gibby's hardship.
No,
it would not be
it doesn't affect him at all.
For Gibby this
save
at
money,
all.
man. Yeah. Murtile's calling.
Lights away, my boys.
That's right.
Lights away.
Lights away.
What are you going to?
Yeah,
what?
Well, there's nothing. There's no comeback to that.
Modes has spoken, so it must be.
We've got a lot to get to on this program today, including some pretty surprising releases from the Chiefs' perspective with releasing tackles Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz. We'll have that conversation. Scott Pioli will join us coming up next on that front. Those were your OBM Hot Topics, preferred business provider of your Cleveland Browns of all the X's and O's for your office. Call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. Additionally, if your game plan for this season includes buying or selling a home, Howard Hanna Real Estate Services has you covered. Visit howardhanna.com/GoBrowns today. Scott Pioli, former NFL executive, of course, worked in Kansas City as well, will join us on all of the business of the league that is happening at a very, very rapid pace. We get to that coming up next. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Elk and Elk Serious Injuries and Serious Lawyers. Call 1-800-ELK-OHIO for a free case review. Elk and Elk is a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. With that, we head out on the Fifth Third Money Line for a visit with Scott Pioli, of course, here at one certain time as the pro personnel assistant under Bill Belichick here from 92 to 95 and a long and illustrious career in NFL front offices. You can catch him now on the NFL Network. Their free agency frenzy coverage is all week, kicking off Sunday at 1 o'clock. And, Scott, thanks for the time. And the word frenzy seems kind of appropriate. This has been a wild couple of days already. We see the latest stuff from Kansas City with the cutting of both of their starting tackles. Is this just the beginning of what could be a pretty wild next couple of days in the NFL?
Yeah, guys, I don't know. I don't get too excited or think of it as wild because every year we talk about how wild it is, and really it's kind of wash, rinse, repeat. And it just we had this little bit of dead time since the Super Bowl, and every year there's players of quality, starting ability with teams that get cut and have to go into this, back into the cycle of the NFL. So to me, it's an extremely exciting time. I'm excited about it, but I don't think it's any different. This is just March in the NFL has become a really, really exciting time. And I think those of us that worked in it and work in it now just said, okay, here we go. It's, I think it's kind of like the great teams and the great players and coaches. It's just kind of flatline. Keep your emotions in check and just get to work.
And the work, obviously, take us inside that seat. You lay out your plan. You spend all off season, and now veterans are getting released to change maybe some of the dynamics of what you were going to do. But how hard is this week, the week before you actually get to execute or at least attempt to execute the plan that you've laid out as a general manager?
I don't think it's that difficult because, again, it's important to have a plan in place. But just because, anytime you want to be engaged in a relationship with someone from a business standpoint, you have a plan, you have conversations, knowing that it might not work out. So plans are important, but the ability to react and respond to the changes in the market, whether it's the cost of the market, whether it's the availability of players or, a player that you were after or thinking that you wanted goes somewhere else. And then once again, what we're going to continue to see here, there will be a constant influx of players that aren't on the market today, but as other teams sign players, there will be veterans released and, again, this addition to players. So it's a combination of, again, it's just like a game. You go into the game with a game plan, and then you have to react to, whether it's an injury, whether it's officiating calls, or whether,
sure.
So it's just a matter of acting and reacting.
If you were the general manager of a team that has legitimate contender Super Bowl aspirations, given that the salary cap is down, do you think that those teams are going to really pursue and try to line up as many one-year deals with veterans chasing rings, hoping to then hit the big payday when the cap goes up massively after the TV deals in 2022? Is that going to be a strategy this year, a lot of one-year deals?
Well, a couple things. Yes, I think it will be, but I don't think it'll be exclusive to teams that feel like they're close to a Super Bowl, because there's a way that you can do business like that to make that a part of your overall your strategy. Again, revision going back to the 2001 Super Bowl in New England, people don't realize how that. There's revisionist history of how that was done. What people don't remember, I was there, and I was the one negotiating the contract. We signed 23 unrestricted free agents that year.
Wow.
And we did it for complete total signing bonuses of $2.5 million combined. And that's not just because of what the salary cap was down. And we targeted a certain type of player, and we targeted with short-term contracts that were either incentive-laden and or with the promise, hey, if things work out, we'll come back to the table. And I think it's something that I've been through, we've been through. I think the circumstances this year and the climate and the economics this year, I think it might make it more of a possibility for a number of teams, but I don't think that it should be exclusively in this year, nor do I think it should be teams that think that they're very close to the Super Bowl, because I think there's a lot of people reacting to what happened this year with Tampa Bay and how maybe they were close. They went out and they hit it. What people forget is all the teams that have tried to do that in the past and failed miserably in doing it. Because remember, Jason Light last year, he was on that proverbial hot seat coming off a 7-9 season. He was going to his 7th year, and they signed the right guy and the right guys, and things worked out. So there's been far more teams that have tried to do it. Heck, go back to the Cleveland Browns when we were there. And we go to the playoffs in 1994, and we lost 3 times to the Steelers. Remember, I don't know if you guys were there and remember how that opening series went with the drops at wide receiver between Derek Alexander and I believe it was Michael Jackson. And everyone thought we had built a good team. We thought we had built a good team, yet we felt we were 1 wide receiver away. And that offseason, we signed Andre Rison, and we know how that all worked out in the subsequent season in 95.
Yes.
Scott, yeah, certainly do. And certainly this free agency thing is going to be a lot of fun, and this is what you're made for if you're a general manager, and we'll all have fun with it. But kind of the thing that's hanging over this is some of these quarterback situations. And we've already had Stafford, Goff, Wentz dealt. Deshaun Watson doesn't seem like he's coming off. Sounds like he's saying, I'm not playing. Doesn't seem like Houston's ready to make any sort of move on that either. And then we have this strange situation in Seattle with Russell Wilson, where it seems kind of both sides are not happy with each other. If you could paratroop into those 2 situations specifically, Deshaun and with Houston, and then the situation in Seattle, how do you come back from those spots?
Well, I think, to me, that speaking about the Seattle situation, it just sounds like this doesn't sound that different because it's Russell Wilson, because we're looking for things to talk about in the off season. I think it's a little bit of saber rattling by the agent of Russell Wilson, and maybe a little bit by Russell, because he hasn't come right out and said anything too inflammatory. And to me, it seems like one of these situations where people have been engaged in a relationship for a long time. They don't agree with a lot of things. But I also think that Russell and his agent see a market that's moving, and this may be a prelude to a contract renegotiation and a salary increase this year or next year, right? Because that's what happens. Sometimes players, agents, not necessarily the players, do the business part of complaining publicly, and everything gets resolved after the player signs a nice contract. So I don't know which one this is. Again, I'm not a kind of person that overreacts to some of the noise that's out there. And in the Deshaun Watson case, there's a lot of legitimate noise there. We still don't know exactly what it is, right? Deshaun has a lot of his advocates and surrogates that are out there kind of carrying his message. He is half messaging publicly. We don't know who he's really mad at or why he's really mad. Again, there's a lot of stories out there as to what it is, but we've not heard that from him. To me, that's a much different situation because it seems a little bit uglier. But again, the fact is, when you're working for a team, if you're the general manager or you're the head coach, your primary obligation is to the franchise, your owner, and the fan base. And you have to go do right by the players. This is complicated in this situation. But to me, what's best for the Houston Texans is to keep Deshaun Watson. If they have to trade, they need to get a king's ransom for it. I don't know how this is going to work out, but to me, again, there needs to be a little bit of ownership taken by Deshaun from the fact that he just signed a contract 5 months ago that he didn't have to sign. He chose to sign it. He knew the principles involved because it doesn't sound like his problem is with David Culley or Nick Caserio, right? That's kind of been made clear. But he's the one who chose to sign the contract with the principals that were involved and took all that money. So there's some responsibility on his side too. So to me, you run the franchise straight ahead, and Deshaun Watson is obligated. He has options too, and so does the club, and time will tell on those.
Scott, last one, and we appreciate the time. Put yourself in Andrew Berry's shoes and kind of tell us how you would approach addressing the defensive end opposite Myles Garrett. You've got a dominant player. He's locked into a long-term deal. Is this something you're looking in this rich free agent class this year? And if so, who do you like? Or do you want to try to address that during the draft?
Yeah, with all due respect, I've been a general manager of a number of teams and in that position, and I'm not someone who inserts myself into saying that I'm going to be Andrew Berry and ever pretend that I know the team better than Andrew or than Andrew and Kevin and Paul DePodesta. They know what they need. They know what they need to do. And I think sometimes those of us who've done it before, I'm not going to set fires to the organization and tell them what they should do. Here's what I do know. If you're a Browns fan and you're a Browns supporter, I would not get too caught up in what your own personal ideas of what you think that they should do, because it's clear that Andrew knows what he's doing. It's clear that Kevin knows what he's doing. And quite honestly, Jimmy and Dee Haslam know what the heck they're doing. And this team is on a right path because they have a plan. They have a process. They have a system. They're adhering to it. And to me, I just think that whatever they do, it's going to be the right thing. And with all due respect, just because I've worked a lot of years in the NFL, I don't feel comfortable, saying what I think Andrew should do, because I think he's quite capable, and he's showing Cleveland fans that trusting in Andrew is what I would say to Cleveland fans.
Very, very well said, Scott. We know your time is very valuable. We thank you for giving us a little bit of it today.
No, thank you, guys. Thank you for having me, because I have a great deal of affinity for the city of Cleveland, the Browns franchise, and truthfully, all the people that are working in it. So thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great stuff there from Scott Pioli, longtime NFL executive, Patriots, Chiefs, here with the Browns, of course. And be sure to catch the NFL Network's free agency frenzy coverage all week, kicking off Sunday at 1. Just a reminder, all guests who appear on Cleveland Browns Daily do so via the Fifth Third Money Line, Fifth Third Bank, making Cleveland Browns Daily a Fifth Third better. It's a pretty dang good sports weekend, Coach. All the conference basketball, players, free agency in the NFL, all this stuff happened, and I'm sure there's something I'm even forgetting, but I mean it's going to be fun. And we didn't get a chance to talk about it. What did you make of the Schwartz-Fisher dismissals in Kansas City?
I know they're injury related, and so perhaps they will look to bring them back at different levels, different deals. But I think that they felt they got to the Super Bowl without either one of them, and so that they didn't need to dole out that kind of money. I think it's surprising. They're basically going to have a majority new offensive line. Certainly the two tackles will be new for them going into the next season. And I was talking with Bill Callahan downstairs a second ago, and I said, Coach, we were talking about what's going on with the league. We talked about those releases in particular, and he said, it's just going to be tough for veterans right now when you're going to see a ton of these releases. And I asked him, how nice is it for you to be where you could go through all the teams in the NFL, and I don't think there are more than 5 that are bringing back their starting offensive lines.
No, I don't think so. I mean, Kevin Zeitler yesterday as well, after we got off the show, was cut by
He said he wasn't
Giants,
even sure that there were 2 or 3. So we are in a very good spot in terms of continuity on our offensive line relative to the rest of the NFL.
Yeah, and then you have to remember, folks, too, as some of these guys become available, that means guys that teams, it could very well mean and likely will mean that guys who probably weren't on the chopping block now could be.
Sure.
Because somebody's available that you didn't think was going to be available. So there's a huge trickle-down effect to all of this as well that certainly has to be considered. Coming up next, we'll do the defensive end opposite Miles. That will be in focus of your Cleveland Browns Daily free agency big board. It is coming up next. You're listening to CBD on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Beau Bishop here for my friends at Weather Seal Home Services. Do you need a roof replacement? Would you like to replace your roof for the last time? I know that you would. Well, that's the benefit of choosing a metal roof from Weather Seal. Metal roof technology, materials, styles, and colors have improved significantly. They're more beautiful, they're indestructible, and they're more affordable than ever. Plus, with the new metal roof, Weather Seal includes a 6-inch gutter upgrade up to 7 years. That's right, 7 years, 0 interest on the financing on that. You can call my guys, 877-351-SEAL, or visit WeatherSealHomeservices.com. 877-351-SEAL. Visit WeatherSealHomeservices.com. Dr. Z, before we get to your defensive end opposite Miles preview,
yes.
It is championship week. This was one of my favorite weeks as a kid. As a kid, I preferred, certainly through junior high and through high school, preferred college basketball to pros.
Yes,
and
agreed.
So this was the start of it. When you think of championship week for you, is there a player or team that jumps to the forefront of your mind?
I would say when I think of it in the past, I think of Greensboro, North Carolina, and that's what I think is the ACC tournament taking place in Greensboro, which is definitely Ric Flair country.
It's amazing.
I've seen many a good wrestling event there as well. But that's what I think of when I think of the conference tournaments. I never really think of, even though I was obviously an Arizona fan, I still don't think of the Pac-12 tournament. I think it was always the ACC tournament, Greensboro. That was it.
That is amazing, because obviously I'm not from that part of the country either, and it is what I think of is the ACC tournament, because Carolina and Duke were so great. And honestly, for whatever reason, the first player who comes to my mind is Randolph Childress, who was a guard at Wake Forest, who put on a clinic when Carolina was the number one team in the country and almost single-handedly beat Carolina. Wake Forest ended up winning the ACC tournament that year. I want to say it was maybe 97 when they had Antoine Jameson and Vince Carter.
Okay.
I think that was the team that he was on. I don't think it was the Stackhouse Rasheed Wallace. Maybe it was. It was one of those 2 years when Carolina had a squad, and Randolph Childress just put on a show for Wake Forest. And that tournament in Greensboro, and the first few weeks it was on ESPN, it was on Raycom, like it was on both. It would kind of bounce. But that tournament was just extraordinary, the talent that was in it.
I also do think of the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden. That would be number two for me. And I remember Kemba Walker putting on a show. You think of
Ray Allen
putting on a show.
Remember the shot he made? The year that Ray Allen won, and UConn, I'm pretty sure they won it. That was the year Allen Iverson's at Georgetown, Ray Allen's at UConn. Felipe Lopez was at St. John's. Boston College had Scooney Penn and Bill Curley, and they made a run. I mean, squads.
Was Danielle
Kerry
Marshall
Kittles
around
was
then?
at Villanova.
Or was that?
No, he would have been before that. Kerry
Okay.
Kittles would have been at Villanova at that time. I mean, it was dudes.
Yeah.
Absolute dudes. Yeah. That's a great tournament.
I loved Derek Coleman at Syracuse. Loved him.
I like Billy Owens a little more because he was a little more of a kind of a swing guy.
Lawrence
he wasn't as good as player as Derek Coleman. But he was more of a wing player, where Coleman was, a big.
Didn't they have Derek
Sherman
Coleman,
Douglas
Cycli, and Sherm Douglas on the same team?
Yeah, that was the team that lost in the final to Indiana.
Ronnie Cycli and DC, and that's crazy.
Yeah. They had. Yeah, those were some squads. It was fun. That was an era of that you'll never probably see again, in that everybody stayed. I tried and explain that to Black Cobra yesterday. I tried to explain, because he gets down on, how these guys are one and done because he loves college basketball so much. And I said, buddy, Shaquille O'Neal played 3 years at LSU.
Yeah.
Like, he was the first pick. He would have been the first pick as a freshman. He stayed 3 years at LSU. Like, that's just what you did. Larry Johnson and Stacey Ogman came back to play their senior year at UNLV, even though at the time when they had to make the decision, UNLV was ineligible for the tournament. They came back to play just to play the season.
I mean, never. Not in a billion
Never.
years. Who's your – since you brought them up,
never.
That was my favorite. Even though I'm an Arizona fan, obviously the Arizona team that had Gilbert Arenas and Michael Dickerson and Jason Terry and Mike Bibby that won the national championship. That's,
fun team.
That's one of my – that's obviously probably my all-time favorite college team, but I have an affinity for Arizona. If you take out my affinity, my 2 favorite college basketball teams of all time, one would have been UNLV with Larry Johnson, Greg Anthony, Anderson Hunt, Stacey Augmon, George Eccles, and then the other would have been Cal when they had Jason Kidd and Lamont Murray. But that's because I was from the Bay Area, and I saw Lamont Murray and Jason Kidd both play in high school.
Yeah.
And those guys in college on the same team, ridiculous. Lamont Murray in today's NBA would be a perennial all-star. He was a little ahead of his time. So he didn't like to play much D. He could stroke it. But in today's NBA, Lamont Murray would be incredible.
There's no question. Yeah, I mean, the first team, when you asked me the question, the first team that came to my mind was the 1988 Arizona team with Sean Elliott and Steve Kerr.
Wow, that's your favorite?
Well, it's the first team as a little kid that came to my mind, and I liked Kansas as a kid, and I remember Danny Manning in '88 with Kansas. I think maybe it was the '89 Arizona team.
Can't believe those teams
but Manning was a bigger player. Yeah. Kansas won the national title in '88 with Manning, who was unbelievable, and that was probably my favorite moment as a little kid. But in terms of, I couldn't emulate Danny Manning. He was 6'10".
Yeah.
Like it didn't, as a little kid, like you wanted to go play like these guys, right?
Yeah.
So when I watched the Sean Elliott, Steve Kerr team play, and they had Sean Rooks, and they had guards and they could shoot it, and I loved to try to mimic. Sean Elliott had that great shot on the baseline where he would kind of spread his legs and they would be straight up and down.
Right here.
Yeah. And he just had it perfect. And I remember going outside and just shooting that shot and thinking, gosh, that's a great shot to shoot. But no, I love it. There's several Kansas teams I loved. I love watching the teams. I loved Rex Walters, who was a Cal transfer.
Rex Walters.
At Kansas was a fun player.
There are 3 great college Rexes. Rex Chapman, Rex Walters, and then wasn't there a Rex Waldman who was at UNLV, like after UNLV was really good? I believe I have.
Yeah, there was. Yeah. I believe you do. Yeah.
Bob
Those,
Sura,
I think of the teams
Charlie
when I was
Ward,
little,
Florida
though.
State. Come on.
Oh, I loved Bob Sura.
Absolutely
loved those Florida State teams with Bob Sura and Chuck Ward and Sam Cassell. Those were fun.
Oh, Sam
But
Cassell.
that's the beauty of this tournament is you get a chance to fall in love with a team over a month.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what's beautiful about it. Gibby?
I have a Bob Sura story that we can't tell on the air, but basically Zydrunas Ilgauskas in his rookie year in the NBA, Bobby Sura says, "Don't worry about everything, guys. I'm going to mentor him and take him under my wing." Just
how can you give
think
us
about
think
about
an
that?
intro like
Hold
that?
on.
Well,
think about that for a brief
a lot
minute.
to that.
Z barely speaks any English at this point, and Bob Sura's kind of a reckless one. And Bob Sura says, "I got this. Front office, coaching staff. I'll take him under my wing. He'll live with me. We'll bond.
We'll sort it out."
Yeah.
Wow. I accidentally stumbled into I was playing City League in Tallahassee and stumbled into a game that Bob Sura stumbled into, and that wasn't the most fun I've ever had. I'll tell you that.
Was or was not? Were you on the same team?
Was not.
Oh.
I was on the opposite team. It didn't go well. And we thought we had a nice little squad, and then all of a sudden Bob Sura walks in a high school gym in South Tallahassee, and you go, okay, well, that's going to be a problem.
So it's crazy, like people, you and I think I was a good high school player. I know you were a very good high school player.
Sure.
I was pretty darn solid in like all the rec leagues I played. I would be on all the all-star teams, whatever.
Yeah.
There is such a difference between that and like just a random D1 player. And then the difference between that and a guy who was a really good and then a good NBA player, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
You have no idea.
No clue.
You just have no idea how easy it is for them when they're playing against mortals.
It's like being a golfer. Like
even
I could
good
go out
mortals.
and shoot 72, and there are a lot of people like, oh my goodness, yeah, you're a good golfer. And then if I went out there with one of these guys, it's like, do I even play golf?
What is the sport I play? Yeah,
right.
That's how it feels, certainly. Gibby, what was your favorite team? Favorite Gibby March Madness team?
Come on. You know the answer to this.
I'm a diehard Duke.
Well, which
yes,
Duke team?
Leighton or Duke.
I know that, but which one?
Dookie. My uncle was the head of sports medicine, team doc.
Right.
Like, I got to travel with them the first and second rounds in '91. Like,
oh wow.
I mean, I'm a
So, like,
diehard Duke fan.
If there was a camera on young Gibbe when Leitner hits the turnaround, what happened?
Against Kentucky?
Wait a
Yes.
second.
I
you were at that
I
game?
almost knocked myself out.
Wait a second. Stop.
No, you weren't at that.
You
You were
were
at that
on-
game.
you were
no,
at
no.
that-
I was just saying I wanted to see a reaction
Oh,
of him because I
God.
guarantee
No,
you
no,
was
no,
watching it live.
No.
Jeez.
You almost knocked yourself out.
So I literally jump up in my house, my parents' house. Well, in between rooms, like it's a little bit lower. I literally cracked my head and was like laying on the ground, dazed, like unbelievable. I lost my mind because every one of my friends hates Duke. And when I say hates Duke, every time they lost, I got phone calls at 10 o'clock at night at home.
The 30 for 30 on Leitner's unbelievable. It's so great. And
There's no middle ground with them.
No.
There's no middle ground with
None.
them. There's no, they're okay. You either love them or you hate them. And they had such a lineage of hateable people that you could want to punch, from Leitner to Ferry to oh my gosh, to Cherokee Park,
Quinn Snyder.
Quinn Snyder, Steve Wojciechowski. I mean, they were just
Bobby Hurley,
Thomas Hill, Bob Hurley. I mean, there were so many.
I think the only Duke player that was universally liked was Grant Hill.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
By far.
I think everybody. I think after that, though, like Elton Brand and Jay Williams, like those guys, nobody had that big of a problem. At that point, the hatred wasn't what it was.
No, we were just rolling people.
I still think Leitner's shot. That's one of the. When you think about the fact that they executed that, and then for him to hit, it's one of the most unbelievable plays in sports history.
How do you not guard the inbounds?
And he did it twice. He did it twice. He did it against UConn the year before.
In the regional final.
Twice. Yeah, he did it twice. Yeah, he just honestly, with him, it was similar to the way as a kid I felt about Joe Montana. Like, if Leitner had the ball late, it's done. You're not winning.
That's right.
Like, he was that good.
That's right.
And college hoops was loaded, and it didn't matter.
The thing for him that was probably the biggest slap that really made people hate, and forget what he did at Duke when he made the dream team. Like, that was a bridge too far for a lot of people.
Yeah, he shouldn't have been involved with that.
No,
in retrospect, and it shouldn't have been Shaquille O'Neal either. It should have been Isaiah Thomas. It should have been or whoever. Well, Michael wasn't going to allow that, but it should have been a pro.
Yes.
Other than him.
But if it wasn't, it should have been Shaq.
Yeah, sure, but I mean, I also understand why Leitner was over Shaq. Leitner was a National Player of the Year.
In college
he
basketball.
won 2 national titles. You can argue he's there with Walton and Alcindor as the greatest college player of all time. So I mean, I understand why they did what they did. We'll take a quick timeout. On the other side of it, Nate will give you his look at the top free agent defensive ends. We will not name names on this. We'll be very specific. Before we do that, though, let me inform you that if you're obsessing over something like football, you know it can be a problem. If you're obsessing over gambling, perhaps dangerous, do something to take your mind off it. If you want some tips, go to keepitfunohio.com for great ways to keep gambling fun. We'll hit you with our defensive end free agent preview coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Every Sunday.
Winter weather certainly devastating on your home, which means it's time for you to call the pros at Perfect Power Wash. Dirt, mold, algae, they accumulate on the exterior of your home and lead to costly damage. PPW's safe process and professional techs, they're going to help remove those contaminants, keep your house looking protected. Call the pros today, 888-860-WASH, save 10%. Take advantage of priority scheduling as well. The whole process couldn't be easier, guys. One call does it all. The professionals at PPW will provide a free quote. They will schedule your service. If you want a perfectly clean home this spring, call the pros, 888-860-WASH, or visit perfectpowerwash.com. And remember, the early bird gets the savings here, guys. So call 888-860-WASH today. Use the promo code MyNameBeau. You save 10% on that service, and it is a good one. All right, time to take a look at the free agent preview on the defensive end on the free agency big board. And for that, we bring in Dr. Z. No names, please. Z, no names.
Well, just one. There's only one that we won't name.
Right, the rest you can name recklessly.
Well, there are other people that I am becoming more and more enamored with because you want to cast a wide net, right? You want to have.
Well, that's what Scott Pioli said. Don't worry about what you want.
Right.
Understand
worry about
AB
wants. So let's lay out some of the scenarios. And this is a position that the Browns very well could address aggressively in free agency. It's a position that the Browns could go with a veteran in free agency and then pair that with an early draft pick. There are a lot of ways to go. Now, you do have Curtis Weaver here, who they consider like a draft pick, who's a young, talented player they think can become a sub-package pass rusher. But let's go on kind of the shopping list, shall we, the wish list. And we'll start with he who shall not be named, who has one of the top 10 pass rush win rates in the NFL. He's got guns. They are for hire. We like him. The question is, if there is any question about he who shall not be named, is he stout enough against the run to truly be an every down defensive end? And I think that will be the big question, and what he commands in free agency will tell you that somebody does or does not believe that. But he is definitely very much an apple of our eye. Another, I think, guy that as I've talked to more people around the league that I'm starting to become somewhat enamored with is Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Romeo Okwara. Out of the Detroit Lions.
Oh, boy.
25 years old. That's what Romeo is, only 25. And last year, from week 12 on, the number 3 pass rush grade amongst edge defenders. He had a career year, 85 pass rush grade, 9th best in the NFL for everybody in 2020. And so if he figured it out, now before that, he kind of burst onto the scene last year. That was his best year. So you have to say, okay, did he turn the corner? Or what's the deal? But certainly from a pass rush win rate perspective, from an athletic, a spark profile like Lawson, didn't say his first name, could be Shaq Lawson. I don't know.
Yeah,
don't know who I'm talking about.
Who knows?
Those two are kind of in a unique class amongst the younger players that if you're looking for, a long-term running buddy, those two might be at the very top of your list. Now, there's also Yannick Ngakoue, who was a 9-sack-a-year, 10-sack-a-year guy in Jacksonville before kind of bouncing around Minnesota, Baltimore last year, but did his best work in a traditional 4-3 playing out wide. So from the young guys, it would be really those three. He who shall not be named, Romeo, and then you have Ngakoue. Shaq Barrett, I don't think, gets out of Tampa, but if he does, obviously, he's right there. He's going to command a ton of money. I mean, this guy led the league in sacks 2 years ago. That's going to be incredibly expensive. So is that something that you look at? Hassan Reddick, now his big sack numbers a year ago, a lot of those buttressed by one game. And then you have the guys where you say, are they scheme fits? Is a Matt Judon, who's been a stud, is a Leonard Floyd, is a Bud Dupree, guys who have done their best work in 3-4s outside. Can they play that 4-3 defensive end? And I think it was Sam Monson who said Bud Dupree's kind of fool's gold. That's not the guy that you would be looking at.
Yeah.
So those are the things that you're weighing right now. I think if you're going a veteran route, there are two names that I would throw out. One is Aldon Smith, who played great for the Cowboys last year. I mean, great.
Yeah, he did.
Tons of pressures, was a stud up front, is definitely a 4-3 defensive end, can play the run, can get to the quarterback. That would be one, though, at 31 that you're looking at a shorter deal with a draft pick. The other would be Carlos Dunlap, who is a monster. When he went to Seattle, totally transformed their defense. and their ability to get to the quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
So he's 32. Again, he would be a short-term guy that you're then hoping a rookie that you probably have to use an earlier pick on a pass rusher in this draft or something of that nature. But lots of routes, lots of options, I believe, for Andrew Berry. And certainly, Scott Pioli, he nailed 2 of the 3 Ps. He said he's got a plan and a process. Let's not forget, he's prepared. So he's prepared for all of these different scenarios. And so I expect the Browns to come out of this with something. The release of Adrian Claiborne tells me something must be coming our way in free agency, whether that's the veteran that you're looking at a shorter deal, like, as I said, a Carlos Dunlap or an Aldon Smith, or we're going big and we're talking about he who shall not be named. We're talking about Romeo. We're talking about Ngakoue, somebody in that category, Hassan Reddick. Those are the different kind of paths I think that this could go.
And you can have it's 2 ways of doing it. The veteran and then the draft, you could pair them that way, or you can just handle it now and the draft can be different. And knowing Andrew Berry the way that we do, he's prepared for both.
Yes.
He's going to have options A, B, and C. He's going to have everything lined out. They'll be ready to go, and they're going to be ready to execute it. I assure you, he knows who his first call's to.
Absolutely. And look, there are guys that you can even take a gamble on. For example, a guy like Vic Beasley, who was very good in Atlanta for a time, hasn't been recently. He's somebody that you could look at. We were reportedly close to bringing in Vinny Curry. So maybe it's Vinny Curry as your veteran as a stopgap that you bring in, but you also bring in one of these younger good guys like a he who shall not be named, and then Curry's kind of cheap, and you've got a room that's going to have Miles. It's going to have he who shall not be named, a Vinny Curry, and then maybe a Curtis Weaver or a Porter Gustin. So I think that I don't think it's limited to just one person in free agency only. I think that you could have, if you go younger, you still might have kind of that wily veteran that you bring in, as well as you're bringing along your young guys, Gustin and Curtis Weaver.
Yeah, and this is it. This is job one.
I think so. I think it's here in cornerback.
I think so too. Yeah.
And the back five, whether it's corner, whether it's a safety who's a hybrid nickel safety, et cetera, that's job one. That's where you're looking. That's where it is bountiful. I mean, look, Shaq Barrett's probably the best guy on the market. I don't think Tampa will let him go, and that you're talking breaking the bank. With a guy like Romeo, with a guy like he who shall not be named, you're paying for what you think will be increased production in your scheme, your system, opposite Miles. And the difference may be Romeo's been a little bit better against the run in his career versus he who shall not be named. So maybe that factors into what we think fits better in our particular style of defense. But you could also see them, I think, just, go for it. And Ngakoue is a guy whose value compared to where it was 2 years ago, and supposedly we were in on him, is much lower. So I think he's certainly still in the mix for the Browns.
Yeah, and if you just think about the difference that happened in Denver when they put DeMarcus Ware opposite Von Miller, that's what you're trying to. That's when a defense goes from being special, being good and dangerous to unblockable, and that's what you're trying to accomplish if you can do it here. And so that's why you could see some big game hunting here. Good job out of you on that. We'd be remiss not to pay homage and give our thoughts and prayers to Joe Tait and the family and all of it, and just a tremendous loss. And I won't sit here and pretend that I grew up with Joe. I'm not from here. I didn't. I certainly was well aware of when his career ended and the incredible amount of and gushing of support and attention that was given to that, and the greatness of people who are from here that felt about him. But unlike you, Gibby, Z and I did not grow up here. You did. And when you think of Joe Tait and what he meant to you, sir, what comes to mind?
I mean, I've seen it all. I've seen I don't know how many different tweets from people in our industry, friends of mine. We all did. We all went to bed at night. Our parents thought we were asleep, and we'd be listening to West Coast games I listened to a West Coast game on my Walkman. I would never go to bed until he said, "Have a good night, everybody." That was his out.
Yeah.
I mean, from day one of the Cavs' inception through 2011, I believe. I mean, he was the Cavs. Like, the Cavs were so much fun in the 80s. Like, that was 10 to 15 years old just listening to him. And I mean, it was guy would do anything. The guy called Mount Union games. He would show up and do high school basketball games for a couple of Lorain County stations. He loved nothing more than to go, and he wouldn't take a penny for it. He would show up and be like, I want to work for EOL tonight, or out in Lorain County. He would show up and be like, yeah, let's do a couple games. He would call in advance, and he would say, hey, can I do a couple games tonight? And he would never take a penny. He loved doing high school football, and he loved doing college. And he was one of the most generous, kind-hearted people I've ever known, and it's a loss. It's a huge loss. That one hit me a lot.
It is a huge loss. He was definitely the voice, and when I first moved here, I remember listening to him. And a lot of times I would sit at some of the Cavs games up there in the club seats where he would be stationed right there, and you knew you were watching greatness happen. Real quick before we go, just want to say, don't forget, tune in tonight, 8 o'clock for the Browns Live 75th Anniversary Special. It's going to be fun. I know, Beau, you're fired up about it. I'm fired up about
it. Set the DVR.
Stefanski, Landry, Peter King, Top Dog, Hanford Dixon, and more. 8 o'clock tonight, clevelandbrowns.com. The Browns mobile app, myself, and Jim Donovan hosting from the Hall of Fame.